Lighthouses are beacons of hope and markers of death. They dot our coasts, standing watch over the places where ships are lost and lives are sometimes saved.
It appears that the North Atlantic is full of haunted lighthouses. The lighthouse at Ferryland Head, they say, is no exception.
The Ferryland Lighthouse sits at the top of a cliff on the east coast of Newfoundland. The light and the keeper's house attached to it was built in the 1870s. A century later, the light was automated, the keeper let go, the house abandoned. Enter Gerald Squires, now a renowned Canadian artist, but then an unknown painter with a young family. Squires was looking for a quiet place to paint and for inspiration. He found it at Ferryland Head.
I moved to the Lighthouse because I wanted to find a place to live close to where I was working. And I wanted to know what it felt like to live in the landscape that you're painting, that you're working with. And I wanted not just the gentleness of the landscape, but I wanted to know the difficulties involved. I wanted the harshness of it. So I wanted to live that life, you know? And the Lighthouse was the answer to this.
The months go by. Squires works on his paintings, while his wife Gail and their children get used to their new home at the edge of the sea. Then, one day, a ghost comes calling.
We were all gathered this one day. It was a really foggy, cold, miserable day. And I heard this knock at the door. Rarely do people come out, even bother with us at all. And there's this man standing at the door. And he said, your dog asked me to come in. I said, oh, gee, the dog asked you to come in, you better come in, because the dogs really know, you know. And so anyway, he came in, and I introduced him to everybody in the house. He never did tell me his name. And he started telling stories about people that he knew at the Lighthouse. Other, stories that people were drowned, and, all the kind of things that you would associate, of course, with living in a harsh environment like that. And so I found him extraordinarily fascinating, and so did everybody else. Everybody was taken by this charisma. Was terrific. And he chatted away. He must have been there for an hour and a half, and he's as real as you are. So he gets up and he leaves after quite some time, and many cups of tea later. And he goes out, and Gail goes out to the front, overlooking the downs from the front window. And she noticed an old car there. And then when he left, the car had gone as well. And then she said the strangest thing. She said, did he fly in here or what? Something strange about that guy.
The next day, Gerry Squires went into Ferryland to find out more about his strange visitor. If anyone could give him a clue about his guest, it would be his old friend and local historian, Arch Williams.
So I told him the story. And Arch said, well, what do you look like? And so I described him, And he had a little grin on his face. And he said, that's Dick Costello. He said, I know that guy. Dick Costello, he used to live here. He said he was a policeman here. And I said, well, where does he live? And he said, well, Dick died 20 years ago. I found that interesting. I said, well, it didn't seem like a ghost at all. There's no way that this guy was a ghost. But anyway, I asked around the community as well, and other people thought, oh yeah, that'll be Dick,
4 years go by. Gail Squires has become a potter and set up a studio in an old coal shed attached to the Lighthouse. She too gets a knock upon her door.
I was out walking. I just happened to drop in. I saw some people in the pottery shop. I saw this woman standing there, and she looked familiar, and I couldn't tell who she was. And I started chatting with her, and I could see I could see something about her face that reminded me of somebody else. And at the time, I couldn't remember who it was. So I chatted to her, and she had a Boston accent, but she told me she had lived here and was born here in Calvert, and that her father was a policeman. And then I said, not Dick Costello, right? Just like that, right? And she said yes, and she was totally amazed, right? She said, how did you know my father? He died all these years ago. And I said, well, he came to visit me, I said in a kind of little grin. And she said, well, what happened? And I told her the story. And she was totally amazed by what I had to say. And then she hit the nail on the head and said, well, my father had this saying that when he wanted, especially if he wanted to get in somebody's house whom he didn't know, and he would knock on the door, and the people would come to the door, and he would say, your dog asked me to come in, do you mind? And I said, well, she said, that's exactly what he would say.
What is it about lighthouses that seem to attract the paranormal? Maybe it's their isolation, the absence of any other living soul for miles and miles, and the toll that must take on the human mind. Or perhaps it's the countless tragedies that have transpired on the seas they watch over, filling the waters with bodies and restless souls.